Hey everybody, and welcome to your next. I'm your host Jerome. When I tell you you're in for a treat today, I've got Mark Hartmann with me. He had what I consider to be one of those once in a lifetime experiences where you're able to exit your company early enough where you still have your health, young enough where you still can do all the things you want to do, but also so early that you can't decide that you're just going to do nothing because you still have too many prime years left. Uh, Very few people actually get to the exit. You think about it, 90% of businesses fail in the first 10 years. Then there's 20% of businesses that go to market that don't sell. And then you've got, the 75% that regret their exit. And so when we dive in today, I think you're going to get a true glimpse into how remarkable this accomplishment is that Mark had 5, 6 years ago. No, it was a little bit more than that. It's almost been 10 years now. Um, and you'll get to understand why he's doing what he's doing now. So, with that, Mark, man, welcome in. Thanks for coming out.
Jerome, thanks for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Man, what a pleasure. So, I always open these up with a simple question. Have you had an exit?
Yeah. 2017, sold a company called Ethicare Advisors to a private equity-backed organization called Zealous Healthcare. Ethicare was a medical claims cost containment company. We worked for insurance companies and health plans to help them save money on high dollar and specialty medical bills.
So, how does somebody get interested in that? Because that doesn't sound like a business you saw when you were a kid and you're like, I want to be that when I grow up.
Nobody says they want to audit medical bills when they're little kids. Trust me. Happenstance, right? Happened to be in the industry working in a third party administrator. Happened to see market opportunities. Have to confess, had a great business partner who was the visionary. I was the execution guy. John was spectacular at seeing a need in the market, putting two and two together, and always making it look like an eight. And I was really great at making eight reality. So we had a great partnership. We're still the best of friends. We still live in the same town together. Just uh, making a business involves really two parts, right? You got to have a dream and you got to have a doer, right? So you got the dreamer and the doer. When the dreamer and the doer are the same person, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, I could gather market intelligence, and he could look at things like on a three-dimensional chessboard and say, geez, Mark, what about A, B, and C? And I'd be like, you know what, you're right. Let's try that. And I go off and help execute A, B, and C with the team, and then we would just, continue to move on. So it is a unique business, right? In settling, medical claims and identifying opportunities for savings without a doubt. There was maybe 25, 30 companies in the country that did it when we sold. It was a very small business, very small number of companies, very big business. Because when you think about the economy of America, right? What do they say? 17, 18% of the gross domestic product in America is healthcare. So there's a lot of money floating around in that industry and a lot of opportunities to make money.
Wow. So I sit on the board of a health center. We've got 4 locations here in the Triad. And, billing is one of those things that comes up in every board meeting. In fact, we had a 3 hour board meeting last night. Um, what I find fascinating about the industry is so few people actually knows what goes on the backside of uh, going to see the doctor, like the administration, the bureaucracy, the insurance, like all of the coding, like all of that stuff is a challenge. And, for a lot of the companies that are providing healthcare services, if they don't get that right, they're out of business pretty quick, even though they could be providing great care. Um,
Financing of healthcare in America is insanely complex. There's that old adage about lawyers. If you get three lawyers in the room, you get five opinions, right? It's kind of the same way in some respects in medical auditing, right? Because high dollar complex claims can be coded and look very different, right? So, it's a very unique world, and very few people can actually interpret and understand, an inpatient hospital claim with sufficient detail to validate whether or not what's on the claim has actually been delivered to delivered to the patient. So And it's a necessary part to the equation to keep both the insurance company honest in paying their bills and the healthcare provider honest in billing the insurance company fairly, right? So, and making sure at the same time that the patients don't get caught in the crossfire. And that was kind of a mantra that we had as an organization was to always safeguard the patients because that's what we do this for. We do this for the patient's benefit.
Now, I mean, so partnerships make it even harder to exit. And most people I talk to, they're like, man, like if I could have done it all over again, I wouldn't have done it with my partner. And even the fights that happen when people are going through the exiting process, it's interesting that you guys are still friends and still in the same town. Most times people kind of split like a divorce. What do you think was the secret sauce for you guys getting through the business and the exit, and then even post exit? Because that is extremely rare.
Listen, I would be lying to you if I told you it was rainbows, lollipops, and unicorns every day. It wasn't, right? Business partnerships have their ups and downs like, any other type of relationship. John and I had our issues over the years. Mostly it was mine, I must confess that. Um, but he taught me to be a better person, right? Always. And I think that that's something that's very important in the grand scheme of things is, be a good human, right? Be a good human to, everyone you come in contact with, whether it be your family, your friends, your colleagues, your business partners, whoever. Um, so I have to say that we got through it, and part of it is somebody came to us and offered us a lot of money. Now, let me take a couple steps back. Somebody came to us and offered us no money. And that's when I realized that I was doing everything wrong. Um, I was the center of the universe in the business. I was the chief cook and bottle washer. I ran operations, and I was also the head of sales. And if I had gotten run over by the proverbial bus, what would have happened to the business? It would have suffered. It would have survived. I'm not going to play the game that the business would have died without me. That's nonsense. Um, it would have survived, but it would have been different in a negative way for a period of time. At the same time, someone introduced me to Built to Sell, the book written by John Warlow. Great book. If you haven't read it, certainly read it. Um, and what I realized was that I was the hub and the spoke, and I need to get out of that role. So as quick as I did, I did. And hired an operations person who was smarter than me, had more experience than me, could take the company in different directions than I ever could. And then that allowed me to go sell more to pay for the operations person that I just hired. And then as I sold more, I hired a salesperson to sell even more and then take myself out of sales. So at the end of the day, you know, um, the de-risking process was a very deliberate one, something I learned through the Exit Planning Institute, starting as early as back in 2012. And it was a multi-year process. And as a result of that, it led me to getting an offer in the summer of 2017 that I would consider to be very generous. It was that number I had on the envelope underneath the desk blotter. If somebody ever sent me, I opened the envelope. Oh, that's the number. Yeah, I got it. And I hummed and hawed about that for, a week, 10 days. And somebody else came along and offered me um, 50% more than that.
Whoa,
So,
whoa, 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 whoa. So,
exactly. So it was very easy for me to go to John, circling back to your original discussion, my partner, and say, "This is what we got. Let's see where it goes." And we saw where it went, and we took the payday. The sweat equity payday was there.
this is fascinating because I don't find that this is a normal course of events. And guys, I keep telling you, like, this is special, this is unique, you're in for a treat because this is the thing that many founders dream of, but doesn't materialize. Like, multiple people being interested in your business without you going through a process is rare.
Well,
Um,
there was blood in the water. The
uh,
whole industry was going through consolidation, and the blood was the fact that my company had been on the Inc. 5000 list 3 times in a row. with no outside investors. So they saw it as, geez, these guys are rapidly growing, and we got to do one of two things. We need to take them out before they become competition, right? Um, or or we're going to have to neutralize them in some way, through price or whatever. So I'm fairly confident that that was the strategy, right? That um, the people that were looking to buy us wanted to add us to their portfolio before another private equity group who was not in the industry used us as a platform company to start an aggressive push in the industry. So it was a great strategic acquisition for Zealous Healthcare when they purchased us. Um, they did, they rolled us in. We had different services. It was a nice bolt-on for them. It was a real smart decision for the folks at Zealous to get in front of us becoming a platform company. Um, so, it is very interesting, right? That I had thought this through, and I had always thought that my next chapter of life would be it as a deal maker in mergers and acquisitions as early as 2012, and I sold in 2017. So I had went to the Exit Planning Institute, became a certified exit planning advisor, had went to Kennesaw State to the Certified Mergers and Acquisitions program. I had taken a bunch of the classes from the IBBA to become a certified business intermediary. So I had a trajectory in my own head that I was going to do this next, either as a solo guy, as an independent, which is what I'm doing now through my firm Hartman Rhodes, or just go work at a firm where I could be loosely affiliated with them and basically, uh, you know, eat what I kill in my own deals. Um,
So
God,
this is fascinating. So you're saying you start getting training in exit planning before you actually exit your own company.
yep.
What are you doing? Like, who does that?
So two types of so okay, one who does that. So I'm one of those entrepreneurs that feels like consultants come in two flavors. 99% of them are really great and it's hard to get access to them, and 1% are shysters. Oh wait, no, it's the other way around. That's the problem. You can't sort it out. And finding good ones and bad ones is very difficult. And finding a business broker, that whole process was scary to me. I'm going to be honest with you because I was afraid that they were just going to take my listing and throw it on the internet and wait for the phone to ring. So I knew when the day came to sell the business, I was going to sell it myself. That was a mistake on a lot of levels.
I mean, it's bold for sure. um,
Sure.
so, Mark, you're spinning me around in circles right now. So let me
Sorry.
get this straight. You label yourself as the make it real guy, maybe the implementer, but then you tell me you were the sales guy.
Yeah. I'm
Let's
I'm that
back up.
I'm
We got
a
to go
I'm
all
a
the way back, man.
I'm a,
Come
I'm
on.
a, I'm a complete hybrid in that I'm a wildly detail-oriented, systems-generated sales guy.
Yeah, those people. Yeah, okay. So I'm beginning to see how this played out. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. You and your partner decide that you're going to open this company, or did he already open it and say, "Hey, come help me"? How
Yep.
did it start?
He had it up and running. It was doing okay, right? Um, we talked about it, and he said, "Would you like to give it a try?" And I said, "Sure." I earned my equity through the old-fashioned sweat way, right?
Tell me more about that because I don't think most people get it.
So my compensation, right? The company was growing, and I put my foot on the gas pedal to help it grow, right? Um, Needed every dollar it had to keep growing. So, my partner and I agreed that I would get a percentage of the company at certain milestones, and I did. And at the end, we were 50-50.
This is so magical. It just
It's
doesn't
a great story.
happen.
It does happen and it can happen. Um, but people have to think about, plan, be realistic, don't be greedy, be fair, right? You know, and I think that certain people start off in business thinking about, the exit, and that sounds great, but there's a lot of things that have to get done between day one and the exit, right? And Dr. Covey teaches us, right? Start with the end in mind. And I think that it's important that we set up the necessary structures in a business to get to that point. But man, you got to be flexible along the way. If you want to make God laugh, I have the secret. Tell him your plans. Because
Yeah.
listen, every day is a new adventure in small business America, right? Um, and you have to be able to be flexible. You have to be nimble. Regulatory changes can occur, right? I had a business in healthcare that survived Obamacare, right? I'll never forget after they passed Obamacare telling my wife, one of two things is going to happen, Shelby. She said, "What's that?" I said, "They're either going to legislate us out of business or we're going to make a F ton of money." And she's like, "Well, I hope it's the make a lot of money." And I'm like, "Well, let's just see what happens." And certainly we were able to navigate the 2,000-page Affordable Care Act and find opportunities to make money, but others didn't, right? So you have to be nimble in small business in America, and you have to be ready to respond, and you have to have that right mindset each and every day, right? Get up every day and say to yourself, how can I make the company better for the shareholders, the employees, the customers, and the vendors? Get up and do that every day for 365 days for 15 years, and trust me, everyone will have a great organization. You just have to have that mindset.
So that sounds like no days off, man. How many hours a week were you working on this journey?
There weren't as many vacations as I take now, that's for sure. A lot, right? Except at the end, by design, right? Um, there was the last 2 years was more of letting the employees and the team leaders really lead the company um, by design. So that when we went to sell the business, the answer was going to be that I didn't need to stick around.
Let's talk more about that because I think so many founders find meaning in being the hub,
100%.
right?
Absolutely.
They feel important because the business needs them. What does that do to the value of a business?
It makes it worth less, right? It screams deal structure equals earnout. And no, no, I've never seen an earnout really work that well for people. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm not saying it can't, but I've never seen those really work out. We talk about de-risking, right? This is one of those things. The owner has to make themselves, they have to separate themselves from the business. Um, and it's very difficult because a lot of times, and this is something that I've noticed, right, in years of business, is that I'll go to a networking function, right, and I'll walk up to a group of people, and there'll be men and women there, and I'll introduce myself. Hi, my name is Mark. Oh yeah. So I'll ask a man, tell me a little bit about yourself, my title, and my company. That's what I hear first things. I say that to women, and it's not always the same answer. It's 50-50 whether or not I'm going to get told title and
Hmm.
company, or I'm going to get told I got 3 kids and I'm married. And it's just very different how men and women and their identities are connected to their occupations, right? And that is something that um, is very difficult for most business owners to accept, is that when you own Tom's Widget Company and Tom was your great grandfather, and now your kids don't want the business, they want the money, and you hire me to sell it, you have to let go of the fact that the new buyers are probably going to um, do things that you are going to find to be not up to Grandpa Tom's standards. Let's put it that way. And you have to understand that when you go to the Rotary Club for 2 or 3 years after you sold Tom's Widget Company, that they're still going to think you own it. And the emotions of having to say, no, I sold that business 3 years ago. What are you talking about? Right? Um, you're going to have to accept that, right? I can tell you COVID was part of, the transition, right? I sold my company in 2017, and then COVID happened, and people's memories went a little wonky in 2020. For 5 years, I had to tell people, no, I don't own Ethicare anymore. I do mergers and acquisitions. It got to be like a standing joke. I would introduce myself to people at my club, right? My country club, shake their hand. Hi, Mark Hartmann, mergers and acquisitions. even people I had met like dozens of times, and they would giggle because they would walk up to me and say, "Oh, it's Mark Hartmann, mergers and acquisitions." But I had to do that because people put you in these silos. It's easy to remember, oh, Mark, he does the medical cost containment. Well, now I had to retrain an entire sphere of influence that Mark doesn't do medical cost containment. He does mergers and acquisitions. And it's still taking time, trust me. Once in a while, I'll run into somebody I haven't seen in a few years and be like, oh, how's that insurance thing you got going? Dude, I sold that in 2017. So it's
Yeah.
interesting. The identity in the business owner is something that is not talked about enough. I talk about it in my book. Certainly it's there. And I feel like that is a huge, huge, huge thing with business owners, especially when they've been in the business or it's been in the family for decades. Big, big,
So
big thing. Go ahead, sorry.
it really sounds like you were building your new identity prior to the exit, but you started getting training, it sounds like 5 years before the exit. And then the last 2 years, I guess you could actually start working on that because you weren't as involved in the business on a day to day basis.
Yeah. Listen, if you want to get the best price and terms, be deal ready. That's what I tell people. There are 5 Ds that can really force a sale, right? Death, divorce, disagreement, disability, right? You can be in a situation where you're forced to sell, but if you're always deal ready, it's going to make it a little bit better. May not be the best, but it'll be just a little bit better. Better. So the point is to be deal ready at all times so that if one of the 5 Ds or your ideal buyer come knocking, whichever it is, you're ready to sell the business. And that's what I did, right? So when we went through due diligence, when I sold Ethicare, we responded in a record time to due diligence requests because I knew what they were going to ask for. I knew all the questions they were going to ask, right? I knew the documents they were going to want. I knew which documents to give them when. Um, I knew, how to shield the client list from them as long as I possibly could, right? Eventually, I had to cough it up. I'm not going to deny that. I had to. It was a professional service business. They were going to get that, right? And they actually called some of my top clients before the sale to find out about my relationship with them without me being on the phone. And that was very difficult to allow them to do it, but I knew it was coming because I had been trained, and I knew that if I wanted to get a premium for my business, I knew that I had to do certain things that were going to make me feel very uncomfortable. But I had to do them in a way that I had already been far enough along with the buyers that they were emotionally and financially committed to getting the deal done.
So let's talk about post exit, after the transaction. Uh, People don't really talk about the founder identity transition. I see you mentioned it, right? It's like, well, who am I? How do I introduce myself? Or how do I shift people's memory of who I am and what I do? But I find that the money that hits the account, like the adaptation to that being there happens pretty quickly. And the time that you were spending, the 40, 60, 80, 100 hours a week, whatever the person's wired for, that empty space becomes a container for a lot of questions getting asked. And sometimes that talk becomes pretty negative and dark. Did you have any remorse or regret on the backside?
For sure. Seller's remorse, big time. Um, it's something, regardless of the money, it's something, right? So I had sold my company, and I had 60 days, November 1st to December 31st, where I was engaged full time. And then after that, it was more of a part-time consulting role if they called if they need me, but it wasn't really a heavy lift on that side. So I had already planned months and months and months before the sale that I was going to spend the winter in Florida, Naples, Florida, and work remotely. But now that the sale happened, I was down there and no joke, on a whim on a Sunday, my wife and I walked into an open house and bought it. And like you don't, that stuff doesn't happen. But it was a small house. We'd always wanted to live in Southwest Florida. We had honeymooned to Marco Island, so to be in Naples is right there. And it was always one of those bucket list things. So we bought a house, uh, moved in pretty quickly. I was splitting my time between Florida and New Jersey that first winter, and pretty bored out of my mind. Maybe more bored than I can even admit right now. Um, and I was talking to my lawyer about something, and he said to me, how's it going? I said, I'm just bored out of my mind, and this and that, and I regret selling the business. And those words came out of my mouth. And he said, why? And I said, I'm just bored. I don't have anything to do. He said, you know what cures seller's remorse, Mark? I said, no, what? He goes, log into JPMorgan Chase and see how much money you have. That'll fix it. And in some respects, he was right because I had the money to pause and do whatever it was that I was going to do next, right? And starting a business brokerage from scratch, you don't have deals day one closing, right? There's a long runway, right? Um, so I was glad that I had that runway. I didn't have to make a paycheck the next day, right? So that the lesson that he taught me there was you have the money to do what you want, figure out what you want to do and chase it hard, right? So, and really there's three legs to the stool to what I've been working on over the last, 8 years. One is my business brokerage M&A practice. The other is volunteering, for charities that are important to me. And the last leg of that is travel with my wife. Proud to say last year my goal was 30 days on cruise ships, and I got 46 because I'm a total overachiever. Um, this year I have 58 booked already, so certainly moving and trending in the right direction. And what makes it easy is doing M&A work. I can do it from my home office here in New Jersey, or I can do it from a cruise ship. The internet has made it so much easier to, with Zoom and other technologies to work from wherever. So um, thinking about, the next chapter is very important. I have a three-legged stool that works for me, right? Um, and it keeps me engaged, mentally in the business world, in the nonprofit sector, and in the rest of the world, and seeing what's out there, right? Getting to go to fun and exciting places and meet new people, and I think that has helped me over the last 8 years adjust to a new life outside of 50-hour work weeks at Ethicare.
So, how do you introduce yourself now?
Mark Hartman, mergers and acquisitions.
Really? So, still business
Absolutely.
focused.
My wife says I should talk more about the book, right? I just wrote a book, published it in late December, and had a by January we best-selling status on Amazon. It's called The Sweat Equity Payday. She said, "Oh, talk more about the book." Sure, talk more about the book. Sounds easy. Um, and I don't think that the book needs to necessarily define me, but I do love M&A. I love the deal. I hate finding clients. I wish somebody would just say, "Okay, sell this business," and just do it, right? I love negotiating the deal because it taps you in ways in problem-solving skills like no other, right? Because you have the personalities of the buyer and the seller and their deal teams, and navigating it's like navigating a jungle, right? And every day is like the last inning of the World Series or the last 2 minutes of the Super Bowl, because at any moment it could go either way, right? And somebody could walk away. So yeah, I love it. It's fun. Some days I beat my head against the desk and I'm like, what am I doing to myself? Other days I have to have a come to Jesus talk, as I affectionately call it, with a buyer and a seller about being realistic in their wants, needs, and desires, right? Um, but overall, I try to do as much due diligence on the front end with people I work with, and I do mostly sell-side advisory, to make sure that we're aligned, right? I kind of drag my feet a little bit to make sure that I really want to work with this seller for the next 8 to 15 months. Because if I can't see myself working with them for 8 to 15 months, I get them off the bus as quick as possible. I'm not the guy for you, right? And that's so important to me because I'm very what you see is what you get from Mark. I'm a Jersey guy, right? So I make no bones about it, right? I don't sugarcoat things. I'm not your yes man. Um, don't expect me to be, to be there and, to hold you at night. That's not my job. You hire me to sell your business, I'm going to sell your business. You become unrealistic, I'm going to call you out, right? Privately, but I'm going to call you out. Buyer becomes unrealistic, I'm going to call them out too privately. And I think that realness is an effective part of working with Mark.
I find it fascinating that you still introduce yourself with kind of the business focus, knowing you're an exited founder. What's great though is that you don't talk about the business that you exited, because I liken that to wearing your high school letterman jacket, um, where people are just like, hey, yeah, I'm founder of, or the exited
People,
founder
people,
of.
listen, this is the day and age. People go to my website before I have a phone call with them. They've already Googled on my bio, right? They already know that. I let them bring that up. So when I'm having my first meet and greet, I let them ask, right? My meet and greets, with prospective sellers are completely listen, I don't do a lot of talking. I do a lot of asking. Why do you want to sell the business? Why is the business sellable? How much is the business worth? How'd you figure out that number, right? Um, what are you going to do when you sell the business? Have you talked to your financial advisor about how much money you need to go on to the next chapter of your life? And I really want to hear good answers, because when I get um, bad answers, right, I start to think to myself, maybe this person's not for me. So like, what's your business worth? There's really only two answers I find acceptable. I don't know. And I've had a valuation done, and this is what they tell me it's worth. Anything beyond that, it's all white noise to me. I just don't even want to hear it, right? And when a 50-year-old comes to me and says they want to sell their business, um, and I say, well, how much is it worth? And they go, I don't know. I'm like, well, how much does your financial advisor say you need to plug the gap in order to retire? Well, I haven't had that discussion. Well, that's the first step in this whole thing, right? So let's have a discussion with the financial advisor first to figure out how much you really need to achieve your goals, right? And then we'll figure out if your business can be worth that much. And if it's not worth that much today, what do we need to do over the next, 12, 18, 24, 36, 60 months, whatever it's going to be, to get you to that number, right? Because if I bring you an offer for X million dollars to sell your business, but it's not enough for you to achieve your goals, you're probably going to say no and walk away. And what I find when younger business owners call me, it's that they're just having a bad day and they want out. Whether it be a bad day with a customer, a vendor, an employee, cash flow, whatever. Um, that's why I usually tell people that my clients are mostly 60 plus year old, because that's really who I like to work with, because those people are serious about retirement, right? I'm selling the business so that in 12 months after transition, you can retire, right? Sail off into the sunset, take more vacations, spend more time with grandkids, hit the links a little bit more. Um, and that's really, the target market for me is that 60 plus year old entrepreneur. I resonate well with them because I have exited before and I can help them navigate, right? And they'll ask me about that. Inevitably, they will. Tell me about what you did when you sold your business. How did you handle this? How do other entrepreneurs handle this when they sell their businesses? And that's part of the, sell your business smart, right? And kind of, eh, everybody talks about the number. The number's only part of the sale, right? To me, it's all the other, what reps and warranties do you have to make, right? If you sell a product, how much inventory, right? Okay, yeah, somebody gave you $100 million for your business, but you had to leave $75 million in inventory and 25 million in cash. You got nothing, right? So I think that it's not just the marquee number. Sure, that's what you want to, say to yourself in your head. Oh, I got this or I got that. But it's all about all the terms. What reps and warranties did you have to give? How long did you have to stay afterwards, right? Was there an earnout, right? What percentage is tied to that? So exiting on your own terms starts initially during some of those early discussions with me about me uncovering, well, what do you want from an exit? right? I knew what I wanted in part because I was a certified exit planner. I had built the optimal exit in my head, and then I executed on it.
So,
But it took
what was your
years.
personal plan? Because, that part is overlooked more often than not. And do you talk to the people that bring their business to you to sell about their personal plan?
I do. Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to know everything, right? During that first call, I want to peel back as many layers of the onion as I absolutely can to find out what's motivating them for the sale today. Why are we having this discussion, right? And then on the next part, well, if I sell your business, are you going to be happy and what are you going to do next? What's the plan look like? What's the day after closing look like, right? Is it take a cruise with my wife? Is it, oh, I'm going to buy the world cruise on Regent Seven Seas? Well, wait a minute. If that's your goal, right, that's great. But I have to know that because that means you're going to be gone for 6 months on a world cruise and you're not going to be able to be there for transition. And that will impact the type of buyer that I can find for your business.
Wow. Wow. Um, this is so fascinating. I love when people are able to hit their number and then find something to bring fulfillment post exit. And what it sounds like your journey has been is one, getting the number, two, helping other people get their number, as well as having an idea of what it's going to feel like when they go through the process and kind of shepherded them down the mountain. I guess yours is shepherding them to the summit. So that final push to get to the top of the mountain. And then on the backside of that, I find so many people struggle on the way down because they don't really have a plan for it. Yours has been will help people go up the mountain because I've been all the way up to the top, and I'll do some volunteering, and I'll do the stuff that I didn't have time for before, like travel, spending 50 plus days on a cruise ship this year in 26. Um, and for so few people, they actually figured that part out. I watched them spin in circles. I watched them be challenged with who am I? What am I going to do? And they go all the way back down to the bottom of the mountain. And going up another one looks too daunting. And then uh, for the people who plan before they summit, as you did, multiple years before you summited, you have such a different experience, and I think that is so important. If I know you've been doing deals with folks, and maybe early on you didn't really push on the personal plan because most people just tend to focus on the deal terms and the valuation. Have you seen people um, go through this without any real thought of what post exit life looks like?
No, but that doesn't surprise me because for who I'm working with, 60 plus, 65-year-olds, it's all about retirement, right? Um, and they've got a plan for travel. They've got a plan for their hobbies. They've got a plan for volunteerism, right? But part of what I do is I need to hear that. I want to hear what that looks like because that's an important part of what does the transition period look like, right? Um, I think that having a plan and executing the plan for post sale is easy at face value and difficult in practicality the younger you are, right? Because there's a lot of noise that can come up, right? Um, so listen, I had a plan and noise came up in a good way, and for 3 years I didn't work on any deals. Like what do you mean for 3 years you didn't work on any deals? Work on any, that's not true. I worked on one buy side engagement in 3 years. Um, and why? So my wife was elected to become the Rotary District Governor in New Jersey. It's a big job, 70 some Rotary clubs and 2,000 members for a particular Rotary year. And I agreed that if she did that, I would be her helper. So I was her secretary for 3 years. The 2 years really leading up to it, it was a little bit of work the first year. a lot of work the second year, and the third year, the year she was the district governor, was an enormous amount of work. It was a full-time job for me. Um, and I enjoyed every minute of helping her. And it was something that she wanted and to do, and I helped her achieve a successful year as the district governor. And I don't look back necessarily at that in any sort of negative way, in that it disrupted my plan, because my plan was to do charity, right? It just that that period of time there was no deal leg, right? It was all surrounded about charity work. There was a little bit of travel, but not a lot, because it was all hands on deck. And my wife, I think, had 170 some club visits in one Rotary year, which is, basically all the time. She was just moving and shaking and out and about with the clubs and leading them and inspiring them to do great things and teaching them about, the Rotary way of life and fundraising. And I think that was great because she's definitely a go-getter and very personable. And I handled the administrivia, as I like to call it, all the little customer support tickets that came in, if you will, with people with how do I do this or how do I do that, or, Mark, set up this meeting or organize this or write these emails so I can approve them. So we worked as a great team. But during that time, I really didn't have the M&A business brokerage leg in full swing, which was fine. It was an agreement that we made and it was a plan, but I missed it. I missed it a lot, right? I love the deal, right? I love the art of the deal. Not to quote you know who, but I do like deal making. And I can't think of a better occupation for me for the next 25 or even 30 years, because I can helicopter in, do a deal, and helicopter out, right? And if I don't like them, I don't have to work with them, because I'm not necessarily tied to the money aspect of things. Although I don't do this for free, right? Um, I do think that I'm in a great position, and it's been somewhat by design and somewhat by happenstance.
Really? What's the happenstance? It all seems pretty intentional, Mark.
You know, I've been fortunate that so I've been fortunate in life. Let's put it that way. I think that um, the cards that I've been dealt have been great. So I think that's just I've played them the best possible way I think I can. Sometimes I make mistakes. There's no doubt about that. Um, but the happenstance is those cards that have just happened, right? And you play them, right? Don't sweat the small stuff, that infamous book, right? I try not to let things that I have zero control over impact my day. I can't get upset there was a blizzard 2 days ago. It is what it is. There's nothing I do about the weather, right? So that's difficult for a type A personality, because I like to be in control of things, and to surrender yourself and say there are things that are outside my control and I can't get upset about them is sometimes very difficult. So I just have to play the cards as I can. And those cards that I can move around, I try to move around. And those that I can't, I just have to accept that I can't change them.
Hmm. I think there's a real lesson there in um, acceptance, right? The serenity prayer and the things you can
Absolutely.
change and the things you can't. Um, we man, this has been a really cool journey, man. Like the thought this you had your number written down and then you got 50% more is really cool. The thought that you went and got the education, and so few people actually have the time to go get the education to figure out how to be exit ready and then to exit well.
So I think one of the things that puts me in a slightly different category is I don't have children. So the normal time that I would be spending, going to be a good dad, right? Going to soccer practice or going to the musical at school, or, just spending time helping the kids with homework. I never had to do that, right? So that gave me a advantage in the work world, that I could invest that time in myself and my organization. There's no doubt that that is a competitive advantage, right? Um, and it happened that way. And by design. My wife and I acknowledged we did not want to have children. Um, Not to say we wouldn't have been good parents. I think we would have been, but I can tell you that I probably would not be here having the same conversation with you about business because working 65, 70 hours a week, traveling 100, 150 nights a year, I would have been a shitty dad, excuse my French. And that would have bothered me as a person. So you make a conscious decision and then you execute on it, right? Um, and that that decision led me to where I'm at today on a lot of levels. So I had the time to invest in myself, right? Um, and I continue to invest in myself, right? Um, and I feel like that's an important part of being a good member of society is a continual education process, right? Whatever that looks like. And I'm not just talking about the silly continuing education to keep up my business broker certification or whatnot. I think that, there are plenty of things to learn about, whether it be about government or whether it be about, religion. Um, that you should always keep your mind learning about things that are out there. And if you don't do that, you're not really a good member of society, in my opinion. Um, and I feel like even if it's I'm going to read a chapter in a book once a week, hey, you're learning something, right? And I think that's an important part, right? Watching a podcast like yours, Jerome, is learning something, right? That's adding to my knowledge, which is adding to society, right? And I think that's an important part of being a good human.
Yeah, and for me, that's the magic. I think our exits are there to give us our freedom so that we can make the world a better place. And if you can deploy your time, talent, and treasures against problems that you want to eradicate from the face of the planet, I think you're very well on your way to making the world a better place and finding fulfillment. Um, I like to wrap these up, Mark, with a simple question because we cover so much ground. In fact, I've got two for you. The first one is if they want to find out more about the book or about your M&A services, what's the best way for them to do that?
So the book is the Sweat Equity Payday. Shameless plug here for the book. Bestseller on Amazon, also available on Barnes and Noble. You can get it on the Kindle. I'm actually going to start recording tomorrow for Audible. So Sweat Equity Payday, great forward by John Warlow from Built to Sell. He's a dear friend, wonderful guy. Um, and to learn about my services, it's www.hartmann, Hartmann, Rhodes, RHODES.com. You just Google Hartmann Rhodes and you'll stumble across us. And love to have a conversation with buyers or sellers at any point in time. Just drop me an email or reach out to me by phone. Love to chat. I always love to hear what people are looking to buy or what people are thinking about selling and why.
Perfect. And so the final question is what's the one thing you want listeners to take away from our episode?
So if you're going to sell your business, right, and you want to think about that way early, right? And I guess there's probably three things that I'll say, right? Plan for a vertical exit. Don't wait until you're horizontal, right? De-risk the company, right? De-risk the customers, de-risk the vendors, de-risk the employees, de-risk the owner dependents. Um, the payday is more than just a headline number. It's about the terms, the transition, and as we talked about, the life after the sale. What's that going to look like? And I guess the last thing that I'm gonna suggest to people is build the best deal team you possibly can. Find an M&A advisor who's going to be your bestie for the entire deal. Find a great transaction attorney. I talk about this in my book. Don't hire your cousin Vinny. I openly admit that. And get an accountant who understands the tax implications all the way around in the deal. Build that amazing, spectacular deal team. Get the financial advisor involved. Make sure that you understand where you're going, but plan years in advance. Be deal ready.
Do you think that um, most M&A folk help with the personal plan, or do you think they should have somebody on their team to help them with the personal plan too?
I think they have to have somebody on their team, right? I don't do financial planning. It's not my area of expertise. I'm going to openly admit that. I hire somebody to do it for me. People should hire somebody to do it for them. So having that is important, and having a real serious conversation with your spouse or your partner and your family about what's going to happen after the sale, and wrapping in not just the money, but everything you want to achieve, the bucket list before we move on to the next thing, I think is wildly important.
Wow. All right, guys, you heard it from Mark. Got to get everybody on the deal team, build the team. Don't try to piece it together or perform it on your own. He said he sold his own company and it was not the right answer for him. He said it was a mistake. So get support, get the consultants in, even though they're difficult to find the good ones. I think if you look through enough people's reputations and recommendations and ask around, usually the cream rises to the top. Would you say that's fair, Mark?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, you guys. Your dreams should be real. We'll catch you on the next episode.